Hello my 3 subscribers, it's Bianca, not Bianca, not Bianca. I'm addressing you Australians out there, cause every Australian or New Zealander just says Bianca. So today I'm going to be talking about my experience with AP European history and just kind of like tips for students interested. Obviously, because of the current situation we're in, the 2020 exams are whack. So a little bit of an introduction to European history in this course. The time span is 1450 to I think 2000 to early 2000, something like that. It talks about the politics, the economics, religious, social, intellectual movements, and art. So it's very, very dense and it's a gigantic topic. I won't talk too much about the actual exam and the logistics and stuff, because there's tons of videos out there talking about strategies for the multiple choice or the essays or whatever. This is just my experience and just general tips for studying throughout the year that aren't as talked about, because usually those videos are made from a teacher's point of view or an educator, but this is kind of from a student's opinion. The format of this video are the pros and the practical positives and the personal positives, which is just kind of your personal interest in history. The cons, again, the logistical cons, which is where 2020 exams come in and just College Board and all their problems. And then the last part of this video is tips for studying throughout the year. These tips are focused mostly on AP Euro, specifically because that's the course I've taken, and also just because of the mass amounts of detail in the course. However, these tips can kind of be applied if you're going to APUSH or maybe other AP courses. So my circumstances, because that's kind of important. So my school paid for the exam fee, so I didn't have to pay $100 to do it. And then I don't have a part-time job. I only have 2 extracurriculars and only 1 other honors class. So that means I was able to spend a lot of time studying. So that's something you have to take into account, because if you are doing a whole bunch of things, if you have a job and stuff, obviously that'll impact how much time you're studying for it and how helpful these tips are. And obviously, because of quarantine, before it was a 3-hour exam, which I assume is what it's going to be next year unless they change something. So because of the situation we're in, the exams are only 45 minutes long, and it's only 1 essay, which is the document-based question, or a DBQ. And it was only from 1450 to 1914, so beginning of the Renaissance-ish to beginning of World War I. So first, let's get into the pros and the positives with this course. So logistical concerns and kind of practical positives for this course, that doing this course helps with other history courses. It's kind of the basis in a way. For example, AP US history, the reason the US came about is because of European history. It's because of 7 Years' War that began with Europe. That's a European problem, so that's how US history came along. This is kind of applies to all AP courses because it's very structured. There's tons and tons and tons of online resources, so even if your teacher sucks, you can still have you have the entire internet at your fingertips, and most of it is self-study anyways. That could be a good thing, again, if your teacher in school sucks, or it could be a bad thing if you're very undisciplined. And another good thing is that there are no long-term essays or projects. They're mostly only in-class essays, especially if your teacher is making you do it for credit or for quizzes or something, which can seem worse, but it's actually somewhat better because you don't have to focus on things like grammar or sentence structure. If you want to get a complex understanding point for the essays, you'd have to have a good flow of argument, but it's not required. You can still definitely pass with a high grade even if you don't have that English skill. And you also don't have to focus on conciseness, which I really struggle with. So basically, while I was doing the essay, I just kind of blurted out everything I could think of. And this is kind of both logistical and personal. It depends if you care or not. You become more politically aware, especially as you got more into modern day context. you understand things like communism and socialism, and if you're dumb like me, I never really knew the difference. You kind of learn that communism isn't actually all that bad, because people always make it out to seem like super bad, but it's actually like not. Like the ideology behind like communism and socialism is actually pretty good. It's just that the execution of people who in history, like, you know, like Stalin, for example. I'm not trying to justify like Stalin or like China's like communist republic or whatever, and like other bad communist authoritarian regimes. I'm just saying, you know. And you just kind of learn more about stuff like fascism and absolutism, because I know a lot of people nowadays, they're kind of like throwing those words out a lot. You kind of need to learn these things nowadays, like whether you like it or not. So this is where we get into like personal like positives, and it's kind of like what I liked about the course. We just learned about like all types of things that kind of are surprisingly applicable to like today's life. You know, you're thinking about like modern capitalism and like the US school system. Where does that come from? It all stems back to the Industrial Revolution. You really like see how like everything comes together and like why the world is the way it is. And especially if you're not cut off by the pandemic, then you probably get into stuff like the Cold War, the Vietnam War, and understand like why that was like such a thing. Another thing is you understand historical memes and references. You're open to a new world of memes out there, okay? The Good Place is a good example of this. The Good Place refers to a lot of like philosophers and like thinkers over history, such as like Nietzsche, David Hume, Immanuel Kant. The Good Place makes a lot of references to those, so when you watch it, you're like, I know those philosophers and I know what their books are about. So you kind of get a better understanding of like what they're talking about. And tying into that, watching movies is like way more interesting now that you know like the history behind it. You also learn a lot about like artistic movements and like intellectual movements, which is actually really interesting. And I realized after learning about romanticism that I am a true romanticist. I prefer sentiment and emotion over logic, because I believe that logic can't explain everything. And I just like love like learning about like all like these artistic movements and like paintings, and you kind of learn about how these movements are influenced by like political movements and stuff like that, or like vice versa. So going into the negatives of this course. So first of all is the cost. It costs $95 for all AP courses in order to take that and get credit, if you get credit at all. This year was a 45-minute exam and there was no refund for that $95. Like, you'd think they'd cut down the price because, you know, they're graders and educators, like they don't have to pay them to grade a 3-hour-long essay. No, it's still $95, which is kind of a lot. I mean, again, my school paid for it, so I didn't have to like worry about it. But I know for some people it can be like very, what's it called? But I know for some people it can be very like cost prohibitive. And the fact that they didn't refund some of that $95 kind of points to the attitude and like the nature of the College Board itself. Going into that, College Board has lots of problems. There's also like issues with the College Board lying and like kind of luring students into cheating. If you've taken AP exams this year, then you probably know about this. There's a subreddit called AP Exams 2020. It's this whole thing where the College Board pretended to be a user and try to lure students into cheating. Students found out because it was kind of obvious. There's also a lot of issues with this year's online exams. The first exams on Monday, which were AP Gov and AP Physics, I think, but almost half the students couldn't submit their answers. They didn't have a backup way to submit the answers, and they had to all redo their exams, I think by Tuesday and Wednesday. But by the time I took the exam, the issues are mostly resolved. I was able to submit my essay on time, thankfully. I know there were like some students that weren't able to submit it because of like College Board issues. So that, you know, the fact that those problems weren't solved kind of says something about the College Board. Although I did hear for that the second week of exams, they will have like a backup email for you to submit your answers. But the fact that they didn't think of this beforehand, again, also says something about the College Board. While everything will mostly be resolved, there's still kind of that suspiciousness and irresponsibility from the College Board. So that's kind of something to take into account if you don't want to support the College Board. You know, just be prepared. Be prepared to face a lot of crap from the College Board. There's also like issues with students like lacking access to technology, a stable like Wi-Fi, like a stable home environment. Something to consider if you have a problem with any of that. And another logistical thing, if everything was back to normal and it was a 3-hour exam and it was from 1450 to 2000, there's literally not that much time to review the actual information and to review what you learned the entire year, especially if you have like a slower curriculum or if your teacher's like slow at teaching, then there's like not a lot of time. You maybe have like 2 weeks or something. Also, personal things that you might have a problem with if you don't like history, or depending on your how you like to study and how you like to learn stuff. This is a very big picture course, which is good because, as I said before, it's like the basis for all other history. So my camera deleted the footage of me explaining this point, so here we are again. So this class is very big picture, which is bad if you're passionate about a certain topic, such as like the French Revolution or the Russian Revolution. You're only going to be spending like a week on those things max, so there's really like not a lot of time to like be specific on any certain topic, because the point of this course is to take the exam. So because of that, there are likely not many research projects you're going to do. The curriculum is very structured. You're only going to learn skills such as doing the multiple choice, doing the essay questions, and doing the short answer questions. Another con about this course is that there are like 10 cajillion countries that you have to remember, and they all change names throughout history. The Holy Roman Empire. First it was the Holy Roman Empire, and then it turned into the Confederation of the Rhine, and then it turned into the Germanic Confederation, and then it turned into the Northern Germanic Confederation, and then it turned into the Second Empire, and then it turned into Germany, and then it turned into Weimar Germany. Oh my goodness, just chill, okay, historians. So that's like a lot of names you have to know. Geography's changed a lot. It's really difficult to keep everything like in order in your mind. You just really can't remember like tiny details. You might struggle. And also, as I said before, majority is self-study. So because of these like so many different details, like it is impossible for a teacher to go like over every single important point in the class. So if you're bad at like self-discipline and holding yourself accountable, that might be an issue. Overall, most of my negative feedback is related to the College Board actually, not necessarily the course itself. I thoroughly enjoyed this course for the pros I said before. So coming on to the tips, I'll be talking about like everything I did and everything I wish I did. So here's the things I did that I think really helped me. I made a notebook. There's another, I actually have 2 notebooks. I don't know where it is now. It's like stashed somewhere. So I would make like a study guide for each chapter. It was helpful for studying for tests, quizzes, and the actual exam. I never actually had to refer to the textbook after I made this because it basically contained everything that I needed to know. It contained like specific examples of like movements. Oh, examples are really important, by the way, in this course. Like while these like specific details like, oh, who created this painting, you kind of have to know who created that painting because that's very useful for like evidence for an essay. It was also super helpful to synthesize the information at the end of each chapter because I reorganized all the information and I made new headings and stuff. And this was really helpful, especially for my finals in December for this course, because I procrastinated so much on studying and I tried to cram it all in 4 days. The only reason why I didn't like pull all-nighters to study is because I already reviewed beforehand by making this notebook. It's also especially important because AP Euro, again, is such a detailed, dense course. Another thing you really have to take advantage of are in-class resources, like by your teacher, by your school. If your teacher is not a great one, I'd recommend you to go to sources like Tom Ritchie or Paul Sargent. I'll link them in the description. They have like study plans, they have cheat sheets, they have outlines for the course. You should definitely use these to create review books, PowerPoints, whatever. You should ask them for resources if you feel comfortable with that, especially asking for practice exams and practice essays because for some reason, people don't like giving them to students. They like to just give them to teachers. So what I did, like when quarantine started, I made a 6-week study plan because I had that much time because quarantine. So I made a Gantt chart with Excel to like kind of track my progress and like write everything I wanted to do, where I created flashcards with terms from teacher resources and also my Princeton review book. I bought that, I bought it used, it was like $5 or something. I made audio recordings of sections in my notebook, like I verbally explained, and I recorded them to OneNote. Recordings really helped me to keep myself like accountable. I recorded it as if I was using them to study later on. And the other best thing I did was doing tons and tons and tons of practice DBQs, or document-based questions. Doing these practice DBQs made me super comfortable with the format and the strategy, and actually it really helped me with the actual exam, like learning like how fast I was, because during the exam the documents I had were so like weird and wacky. They just like didn't really make sense. But the thing was, like, I knew that I was a really fast like typer and I was a really fast writer. I could afford to spend that extra time to read and outline the documents and truly like understand what they were talking about. For the 2020 exam, you're supposed to take like only like maximum 10 minutes to outline and read, but I took like 15 minutes. But I did that because I knew that I had the time and I knew that I was capable of writing the essay quickly enough that I could finish it in like 30 minutes. If you're lazy or something, you don't even have to write the essays. Obviously that's the best case scenario, but perhaps you're like really short on time. Just find some like practice DBQs, practice essays, prompts, whatever, and just try to outline it so you know, like, if you were writing it, you knew how to organize it and how to analyze it. So something I wish I did throughout the year was, okay, so at the end of the year, my teacher made the whole class make a document called like 50 years increments. So you're basically filling in like very important details in 50-year increments. And I made another one, but it was organized by political, economic, social, intellectual, artistic, and religious. Like, my sense of European history time was not like, didn't match with reality, if that makes sense. So it really helps me understand like dates and stuff, because textbooks they aren't written in chronological order. They group like specific like, topics together, like the Age of Exploration. The Age of Exploration is like a huge time span. It's like 300, 200 years, maybe even more actually. But you don't like realize that because these textbooks kind of group the entire Age of Exploration into one, and they just throw it in the beginning of the textbook because it starts in like 1450s. Another thing I wish I did that I will definitely do next year, especially since I have more APs and honors, is doing like spaced study repetitions. You're doing this to combat Ebbinghouse's forgetting curve. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. First repetition is right after class, second the next day, then after 7 days, then 1 month, then 3 months. And for the actual exam, some things I did, like, you know, I logged into the website, whatever, to take the exam. And then, you know, since I had time, I was doing yoga because I was like breathing really hard and had anxiety. So that actually was really helpful. I also outlined my DBQ. This is mostly because it was open note, so I was able to create an outline beforehand. Again, stressing practice DBQs. I knew what worked for me and I knew what I wanted in an outline. Also, I ate tons of food before the exam. Try to eat healthy, you know, basic stuff. Try to have 8 hours of sleep. I didn't have a good sleep because I had a really bad dream about the exam, so I just kind of woke up with anxiety, thinking that I would fail the exam, and then I woke up and I was like, oh wait, that's a dream, never mind. So if you're considering taking this course, or maybe you're like me and you've already taken it, but you're just nosy and want to see what other people did during the exam, consider the pros and cons. And even if I don't get college credit, I'm still extremely glad I took this course. And this is one of those accomplishments that isn't like a grand accomplishment. It's not something that like very few people have done before, and I could brag about how amazing I am because, ooh, I got a 5 on the exam. Because like, let's face it, hundreds of thousands of people have gotten 5s on the exams. It's one of those accomplishments you might not even realize until after you've finished the course and how you've compared yourself with who you were before the exam or who you are like after the exam. For me, I grew a lot. For some people, their mental health took a dip. As I said before, the information in this course is really applicable to today's age, especially if your modern history part of it was not cut off because of the coronavirus, and kind of understanding how the world works today. Or maybe that's just me because I'm a history nerd. And then it changed to the Napoleon, and then it turned to the Napoleon's name of